Anybody who travels to Oklahoma typically will probably take I-35. You drive by Blackwell, Oklahoma, and you get hit with that odor. You know, that's a quality of life thing. I take my kids and my family on vacation. I don't want that in my home state too, driving down the interstate and my kids are asking me why it smells like a skunk. You know, we know what it is. Any other city down in Oklahoma, you drive by with your windows down because you're enjoying a cool spring day and you got a car goes by you and you just get the pungent odor. It's just, it's not conducive to the state of Kansas, I don't believe.
We have reached a moment in time where we need to align with our neighboring states on cannabis reform. These glaring disparities in law enforcement amongst Kansas and our neighboring states will only continue to grow, and with that, more and more people are going to legally get caught up in this gray area if our laws do not evolve with the realities of what is happening on the ground. In recent years throughout the state, Kansas has seen significant cannabis-related arrest activity. In 2023 alone, there were 4,645 arrests for marijuana possession and 380 for marijuana sales. These arrests cost the taxpayers millions of dollars in law enforcement time, legal bills, and costs to imprison people for doing what is legal in our neighboring states. They create needless criminal records, disproportionately impact working people, and they destroy families and lives. These laws also disproportionately affect people of color. The arrest data in nearly every city in Kansas shows this. We are at a critical juncture where we have a moral and ethical obligation to remove criminal penalties associated with cannabis and decriminalize it statewide, meaning no arrests, prison time, or criminal record for the possession of cannabis for personal consumption. Additionally, we need to expunge the records of any nonviolent cannabis offenses so that Kansans do not have a criminal record holding them back from employment and educational opportunities. The time, money, and resources our law enforcement officers spend on enforcing cannabis prohibition should be used on more serious and violent crimes that face our community. While enforcing cannabis prohibition costs the taxpayers of Kansas millions of dollars each year, legalization generates millions of dollars in tax revenue for our neighboring states. This tax revenue provides additional sorely needed funds for schools, roads, and other public services without further burdening property and income taxpayers. Based on the pace, current sales of cannabis and its derivatives in Missouri, the state estimates approximately $69.4 million in tax revenue will be collected annually. Our neighboring state of Colorado brought in over $274 million in tax revenue last year. According to the 2023 annual Kansas Speaks survey, the Kansas voting public overwhelmingly supports the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis. 67.2% of respondents supported recreational sales of cannabis for individuals 21 and older, and over 60% indicated that they would be more likely to support a candidate who is in favor of the legalization of cannabis. The benefits of legalizing cannabis in Kansas are numerous and well documented. Legalization creates jobs, stimulates local economies, and generates much-needed tax revenue for public services. It also reduces the burden on our criminal justice system, allowing our law enforcement officers to focus on more serious crimes. Even our two presidential candidates support legalization. Donald Trump posted last month on Truth Social, quote, "I believe it is time to end the needless arrest and incarceration of adults for small amounts of marijuana for personal use. We must also implement smart regulations while providing access to adults to safe, tested product." He said, as a Floridian, "I will be voting yes on Amendment 3 this November. That is a vote to legalize recreational cannabis." He also said, if reelected, he would support states who wanted to sell cannabis within their borders. Kamala Harris stated in a recent interview that I feel very strongly that people should not be going to jail for smoking weed. We have come to a point where we have to understand that we have to legalize it and stop criminalizing this behavior. Kansas, being one of the last states to enact cannabis reform, has given us some advantages. We can use this information and lessons learned from other states to craft a bill that includes the best of the best while avoiding some of the mistakes made in other states. In conclusion, it is time for Kansas to step in the right direction and legalize cannabis. The benefits of legalization far outweigh the costs of continued prohibition. It is a matter of fairness, justice, and fiscal responsibility.
You said in your testimony that there's a disproportionate amount of people of color that are incarcerated. Why is that? Do you have information about that? You cited.
I mean, it goes to, it's systemic. I mean, you have people driving who might not have the opportunity to be getting a driver's license, their daily job might be driving more across town, across state lines. Where I live in Prairie Village, we directly border Kansas City, Missouri. So a lot of time people cross the border and not even realize it's state line. In a lot of my area, it's literally a residential road. If you didn't see the sign, you wouldn't know that you crossed over into Kansas. So I just think a lot of it is just, back and forth, especially in the metro areas. But yeah, so just with generational wealth, I mean, there's a whole system of reasons why that, but just if your car looks a little more suspicious for whatever reason, it's not up to date, tags are not renewed, whatnot, you're more likely to be pulled over. So I don't believe our officers are intentionally pulling over people of color in order to be giving them tickets. It's systemic.
Mr. Chairman, one follow-up question. I was just inquiring about that because I wasn't sure if it was something cultural or not only in the general population of people, but or is it cultural in the sense of law enforcement and how laws are enforced? You say it's systemic, but really, I guess that's a very broad statement. So I wasn't sure if you had.
Black people and white people statistically smoke marijuana at equal levels, but the proportions here in Kansas, you're 4.8 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana if you're Black. Where I live in Johnson County, that jumps up to 8.4%.
Okay. I guess I would follow up, Mr. Chairman, if the previous, conferee could provide some information from the Sentencing Commission, maybe that could help us understand that situation a little bit better. Thank you.
I wanted to focus on a few elements here. Some of mine has to do with the rescheduling of this drug. So, the DEA has taken a stance. It sounds like that's what they're kind of leaning towards at this point. But should it be rescheduled, the DEA then has to register approximately 15,000 dispensaries across the United States as pharmacies. Now, I'm not going to get into the pharmaceutical side of things. That's not my expertise. It's more of what we're talking about today with the rescheduling, but the manpower that would consume to get that re-registered, to have the inspections, do the things necessary to turn these head shops into basically pharmacies at that point would be astronomical. Not only that, but you factor in the criminal element surrounding the production, sale of marijuana that we've seen in every single state that has legalized it, from Colorado to Oklahoma. The cartels coming in, the black market industry booming based on legalization. That's an even bigger problem. We found in that legalizing marijuana caused a 336% increase in marijuana-related emergency department visits. This study, or these statistics, come from back in 2016. The numbers in 2016 were 556, and that was prior to marijuana legalization as far as the medicinal side. In 2023, the number of visits was reported at 2,424. And 2016 is when they voted to legalize marijuana for medicinal purposes. The law was put into effect in 2017. Those two stark contrasts, excuse me. In looking at this data, consumers felt it was necessary to seek immediate medical attention. That doesn't sound like a less potential for abuse than the nation's most dangerous drugs, as quoted in the initial reason for changing that. Kansas law enforcement is going to face many challenges in this. Staffing, funding, we've already talked about all that. I don't want to beat a dead horse up here, but this has been a long road to get to this point where we're at. And as we've always had a stance, we continue to have a stance. The Kansas Peace Officers Association is against any legalization of marijuana, medically or recreationally. So I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Committee, you ready for questions? Okay, Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. I've heard, particularly in Oklahoma, where these cartels are coercing and threatening landowners so they can purchase their land for use for their illegal grow operations. I'm just curious what you've heard in that regard from other states like Oklahoma.
Yes, sir. So Colorado, similar in shape and size, they lost out on a lot of rental properties. When it became legal over there, the cartels and the industry bought up rental houses, boarded up the windows, taped up the windows, and turned them into greenhouses, thus driving up cost of living there in Colorado. Oklahoma's seeing the same thing. More right now, they're dealing with straw purchasing, which is similar to what you would imagine in firearms industry. They find somebody on the street, say, hey, I need you to sign these papers. We're going to go ahead and make this purchase under your name, but it's actually under the control of another entity, typically foreign, doing those things. The Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics has many, many cases on individuals of that own, 20 or 30 operations. Got nothing to do with them. They're indigent and living on the streets because they got offered a couple $100 to sign a piece of paper, and it went through. So the black market is very, very strong in those industries, or in those states, excuse me. And the cartels and the drug enterprises are definitely coming in and taking control very quickly once legalization takes place.
Thank you, Senator. Not a question, or if you want to elaborate, that's fine. But I do think it needs to be pointed out. I mean, Oklahoma gets cited as an example in regard to problems with implementation. But like I said, I think it's very important to point out that their program was implemented via petition. As far as voters, it didn't have legislation in terms of guardrails put in place, which obviously is very different in terms of the scenario. As far as what we would be doing, we would be putting rules in place and those guardrails. So I just want to point that out for anybody listening in, that, I mean, it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison when you cite Oklahoma.
Yes, and if I can reply to that, sir. Kansas is one of the last frontiers. We are one of 3 states right now. In my vision and what I view of my state, worst case scenario, if this does go through, we have a responsibility to make sure that it is done, I'll use air quotes, correctly. We've got case study after case study after case study all the way around us on how these have turned out, the shortfalls, I wished I would have looked at this, I wish I would have researched this. So if that is the way that our state decides to go, I can't stress enough, please do the due diligence, do the homework, do the studying, take the 3 to 5, 10 years, I don't care how long it takes, to make sure that we don't end up like our neighbors.
Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with her. I mean, I think everybody in this room probably agrees that Oklahoma did not do it the right way, that it's a disaster there. I don't think anybody in this room will disagree. I see all the heads nodding. Nobody will disagree with that. Bad example there. But one of the things I was kind of under the impression, and I can't really cite why I was under that impression, but when Colorado went medical, talking to people in Colorado, I was under the impression that squeezed the black market almost completely out of the state, where they just stay on the highway, go right through Colorado. Is the black market situation that you referred to in Colorado, did that transition just since they went recreational, or was it always there even with medical? Because I was under, like I said, I was under the impression that when medical hit, that squeezed all that out.
I haven't seen a study on the black industry, the black market industry getting pushed out per se. But if we look at pricing, taxation, all of those things, it would make sense that the black market would actually open up because you're avoiding those taxes. So again, the idea that you could get a prescription, obtain an ounce of prescribed marijuana, use that ounce in the week that you need to, and then turn around and get it at 35% reduced cost from your neighbor down the street or your cartel member, whoever it is that you would purchase from, restuff the same bag. Law enforcement has no clue. You save 35% on your prescription, I guess, if you will, and carry on with your business as usual. That opens up that industry. That opens up that market. So I don't see it being pushed all the way out, but I don't have any study to back that. So
when you were talking about that, I was just curious if you knew when it was medical only versus rec, if there was a difference there. If so, kind of what kind of brought that along? That was kind of my point I was trying to get to. Thank you.
Yep.
One of the myths that we're hearing about is the opioid, that if marijuana decreases the opioid. In reality, there are several studies which were cited within the documents you guys should have had that contradicts that. It actually increases the use of opioid use. And so that is a false statement. Another study that was conducted, published in 2019 in the National Academy of Science, America found that states that pass medical cannabis has seen a 22.7% increase in opioid-related deaths. We already have enough of an issue with opioid issues. So just please keep that in mind. When marijuana came back, was out in the 70s, when it was being grown in the ditches and all over, it was like 5%. Now, they've definitely come a long way with that. We're looking at anywhere from 30% purity to 98% purity within the THC count. And that is concerning, especially for our young people. And we talked about gummies, we've talked about all of those. The thing about the gummies that are being manufactured is really don't know what the count is in there. Consequently, our young people who like the gummies and those types of things, they take one, they don't have a reaction, so they take another one. And then pretty soon they take another one. So the thought that you can't overdose on marijuana is incorrect. I think there are several studies out there that will show that you can. And there have been numerous medical calls, ER calls, people taking their touch and go. They need a medical